Final Destination 2 arrived 3 years after the original film, and spices up the series format with more outrageous and elaborate death trap scenarios. Today we'll discuss the sequel in depth and how, with a few tweaks, it manages to outshine its predecessor. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim.
Sup?
What's up, Tim? You doing good? You feeling alright now? Yeah, okay. Thought I'd check in with you. This is a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror film every week that we've watched, and we are returning to the Final Destination franchise. We did the first one last month, and we're here now to talk about Final Destination 2, which came out in 2003 and is directed by David R. Ellis, who went on to, just after this, direct Cellular, and he also directed Snakes in a Plane.
Oh, okay.
And then came back to the franchise to do the fourth movie. And then, unfortunately, passed away kind of young. He passed away in, 2012 or something like that. You know, he was... So...
That's a shame.
I don't remember the cause of his death, but it was... I remember it happening, though.
Oh. That's a bummer. I'll give him some credit. I haven't seen it since it came out, but I remember Cellular being kind of fun.
Yeah, I remember it was just... I mean, again, it's been a while, but I remember it being a fun little... If a little over the top, but a fun thriller, yeah. So yeah, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers. But of course, naturally, there might be a few things that spoil the first movie because it's a sequel, and you know you have to kind of set up things if there's any characters coming back, which there is. So. And there's characters who don't come back, which is kind of the spoiler, I suppose, in some ways. But yeah, so first movie set up the basic premise, bunch of characters and a big accident, but one of them gets a premonition, they escape death, and then death hunts them down one by one. And there was a lot of big talk last time of Final Destination 1 being not amazing, it having some moments, has a great idea, but there was a lot of talk about how Final Destination 2 was the one that we remembered being more fun, where it kind of maybe nailed what was good about the franchise. So it'll be curious to see, because it's been a long time since I'd watched this. I saw it a lot back in the day when it came out, but
of course
it's been a long time since I watched it. I got into this, so I'll be very curious to see how we feel. There's a lot of faces in this one as well that I'll get to when we start talking about it a bit more, but we'll start off with the simple query, which is, Tim, what do you think of Final Destination 2?
So like I said last time, I'd seen this relatively not too long ago. I was kind of a newcomer to the franchise, and I watched them all for the first time maybe about 3-4 years ago or so relatively new. Like we kind of said with the first one, it's it's a decent enough movie. It has like a really good premise, but it does kind of feel like maybe a little something's missing. And I don't know, I feel like the second one just really delivers. It does exactly what you kind of want a sequel to do. Like, it maybe adds like a few new wrinkles or whatever to the premise, but it's not like completely changing or overhauling anything, but it's just giving you kind of like a lot more that you want from the last movie. And I think the big thing about this is I find a lot of the characters to be more enjoyable. Like, I wouldn't say many of them are great. Like, there's a lot of characters that are really over the top, to the point where it's actually like really funny. Like, I feel like the movie, I don't know, it's kind of hard. Like, it kind of feels sometimes like it's taking itself too seriously, but there's a lot of like characters in this that just do really like odd choices, but it's like very funny. So I don't know, I think it works and actually makes it like a bit more enjoyable to watch versus the last movie, which you had like the one teacher or whatever, but all the survivors were mostly just kind of like these same good looking high school kids that are just like whatever, dime a dozen, just fodder to be killed. But I mean, the big thing is, I think the deaths are a lot more creative and over the top and surprising, which is pretty much what you want from this franchise. You know, you want to be able to look at it and have these elaborate setups and, you know, kind of seeing them focusing on this and be like, okay, is this gonna do something or is this gonna affect it somehow? And then, yeah, like you can't really say like I don't think any of the deaths in this are like boring. Like they're all, you know, like really like elaborate and over the top, and yeah, it just makes it really fun and enjoyable to watch. Like especially like the opening scene, which I think even before I had seen the movie, I had already known of the opening scene or at least like seen clips of it or something, because I don't know, I feel like it is kind of iconic, and I feel like when I think of the series, I think of this, you know, opening scene with the log truck and stuff more than I do like the actual airplane, you know, from the first movie, which yeah, I think that's definitely saying something. So yeah, I had a really fun time revisiting it and watching it again. Definitely you know, highlight we're only 2 movies in, but definitely a highlight of the franchise so far.
Yeah,
sorry, you have to get choked up.
Well, what's funny,
I know it was a good opinion, but
yeah, it was all right.
One day I'm gonna like have a take that's so good it's just gonna bring a tear to your eye.
Well, sometimes I get a little teary when I cough, so I mean I'm almost there right now, to be honest. But anyway, because I hadn't watched this in a long time, but I remembered really having fun with it. And what's funny is going back into it now, having just watched the original again, is like I do notice watching it this time the little serious moments that they're still kind of trying to keep from the first one, but like you say, there's just so many like wacky characters. And the ending especially is like, no, they're just having fun with this. Like, the tongue is in cheek for large parts of this movie. And I think the opening disaster, if you want to call it that, like it's so much better than the plane. Like it's like so much more diverse. There's more variety in what happens in it. The characters that are introduced are a lot more varied as well, because it's not just all like from the same high school class. So
exactly,
you've got different people in different vehicles that are all there for different reasons on the highway or whatever it is. And you know, all of it adds up to mostly great death scenes that do the thing that was good about the one great death scene in the first film, which is it they show you multiple possibilities for how the person might die. They're usually quite over the top, like you said, silly. There's really only one towards the end that's kind of sudden, and it is easily the weakest death probably of the movie, but the rest of them are all really good. And the beauty, of course, of this opening, you know, truck highway scene is that unlike the first one, which is just kind of an explosion in the sky, so there's not really much to it, you actually get to see all the characters who die twice. So you get multiple deaths for each character, which is great.
That's true, yeah.
Which, for, you know, as a horror fan, especially in this case where they're a bit more over the top and they're a bit more gory than the first one was, I think, where there's definitely a bit more guts and mucus and blood and splooge, and not a splooge.
Splooge. I mean, I'm sure someone was doing something in one of the cars, but
very possibly, yes. There was a variety of things happening in those cars. So,
can I just put this out there too, like, not to sound cocky or anything, but if I was on that highway, I'm pretty sure I would have survived.
It sounds a little bit cocky.
I'm a good driver.
You know, it's not about being a good driver, it's about if death thinks your time's up.
I could outrun death.
Yeah. Honestly, like, that sequence is better than the plane sequence. Most of the deaths are better than most of the deaths in the first movie. The characters, not all of them, but enough of them are kind of silly or funny enough that you get these little weird moments that kind of make it just memorable. Like, they have some quirks that they don't really need to have, but they have anyway, and it kind of just like gives them a little bit of flavor. Like, for example, one character just happens to have won the lottery, and it doesn't really serve much of a purpose, really, other than the fact that he's wearing a new watch at one point, I suppose. But like, he could just be wearing a watch. Like, he didn't have to just win the lottery and get a fancy new one.
Right.
Like, you know, like it didn't need to be that, but it adds a little bit of humor to the scene because there's like all these women are phoning him and saying, "Hey, I just heard about your lottery win. We should get back together," or something. You know, like there's a lot of that going on. It just adds a little bit of flavor to some of the characters, and the characters by their nature are far more memorable. And I think what stuck out to me watching it this time is that Ali Larter, who returns for this one, is like the worst part of the movie.
Oh, for sure.
Like, she's terrible in this, and I don't know if it's because I've seen her in other things be okay, but like her dialogue here, she's the one who keeps going, "But death's designs." Like she's still being written like she's in the first movie, which I guess is consistent, but just the way she'll stop and start talking about things when the rest of the characters, well, they're buying into the stuff that's going on, or you know, there's more fun being had with it with the other ones.
Yeah. And also, you know what I realized about this movie? And I don't know if we talked about it in the last episode or if it just totally escaped me, but do you know what her character's name is?
Oh, you know what? I was going to bring this up as well. You're going to the right place. So, her name in the last movie, as far as I knew, was Claire. Right?
That's what I thought. Yeah, right? You know, the real name of like actual people, like there are people named Claire. And
what's weird is that in this movie, AJ Cook's character, she's the main character. Kimberly, I think her character name was, but AJ Cook, who I've seen in a few other things. I've seen a lot of actors. I'll do the roll call in a minute of the actors, but she keeps calling her very clearly, amusingly enough, keeps calling her Clear. She's like, "Clear, you're Clear Rivers," right? And I always took the Clear River name as kind of like Clear Rivers, like it's meant to be kind of a pun, right?
Sure, yeah, hippy dippy parents or something.
Yeah, but when they see Tony Todd, he clearly calls her Claire in this movie. He calls her Claire, which is what I was calling her or what everyone else was calling her in the first movie. So, but then in the end credits, if you look at her name, but she gets top billing, by the way, which is bullshit because she's not the main character. But she gets top billing. It's the word Clear.
Yeah, there's another character that I thought was familiar on this in the movie, so I was looking it up on IMDb to see like where I knew that character from, and then like she was like one of the first, like Ali Larter was one of the first people listed, and it had her name as Clear, and you know it's hard because like 90% of the time when people are saying her name, even if they are saying Clear, you're just assuming it's Claire because again that's like an actual name, but that just really threw me for a loop when I found that out. I was like, wait a minute.
And just, you know, I'm just looking at it now. She is credited as Clear Rivers in the first one as well. So maybe we just never heard a clear.
Yeah. We didn't hear it clearly. Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of. So I actually think she's actively the worst part of this movie. I understand why they have someone from the first one to kind of like help with things, although it's kind of silly how like she's so sure of like things and like they can solve it and stuff. Like it's like, let's go see Tony Todd because he knows more about death than he was letting on. And I'm like, what? And he comes up with this rule. We'll get into it in spoilers what the rule is, but there's like a new bit of mythology that might fix everything. And it's like, you just pulled this out your ass. Like, where did this come from? Like, I don't hate the idea. Like on its own, like if you told me this, okay, this might solve the problem, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see the logic, but why does he know this, and why does he just blurt it out? Like why didn't he say that to him in the first movie? Like, I don't know. Anyway,
it's super weird. Like, at least with him, you can kind of make a case and say, like, all right, he's a creepy guy and he's a mortician, so he's surrounded by death. So maybe he has some like out there theories. The thing that throws me for a loop is at the very beginning where they have that guy on TV who's like laying out the plot of the first movie, basically.
I mean, this is
like, how the hell does this guy know? Like.
This is just your for the people who didn't see the first movie, they wanted to have like a previously on, so they've just sort of woven it into the opening titles where this guy's been interviewed on a talk show.
But it's like so strange though, because if it was the real world, like they would do a special on it, but it would be like, hey, isn't it a weird coincidence that the people survived ended up dying? But instead it's like, this guy knows the exact plot. He's like, death has a plan for people, and it killed them in the exact order of they died they were supposed to die on the plane. Like, no one would have known that. Like,
he watched the first movie. That's what happened.
Yeah.
He somehow escaped the reality, came into our reality, watched the movie, and went back. I think that's the only explanation for this. Yeah, so the cast, let's sort of do a bit of a roll call here. So AJ Cook, who I saw on, I think she was in a show, she was in Dead Like Me, and I've seen her on a couple of other things. I think I saw her in this first. This is one that I kind of saw in this first and then saw her in other things. Obviously, Todd's veteran of the horror genre, but, you should know who he is. The cop character, Thomas, apparently.
He looked familiar, but
do you know what's so funny is I saw this movie a lot back in the early 2000s, and I never recognized him, but I have since rewatched the show that I know him from, so I recognized him instantly this time. He is Jimmy Olsen in the season 1 of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
Oh, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I immediately noticed from. Maybe you see him as something else, but that's him. So I was like, oh, Jimmy Olsen's here. Which is interesting.
It doesn't look like a Jimmy to me. I'm sorry.
Which is slightly interesting, in that AJ Cook, the main character's best friend, at the start, the blonde, she guested on a few episodes of Smallville, so that's 2 Superman connections.
Of course.
What do you want from me? Yeah, there's an actor in this called James Kirk, which is kind of wild.
Like from that dumb show that you watch.
That I watch. Oh, just me. I'm the only one who watches it. Like, how old is this guy? Like, does Star Trek exist? Because, yeah, he was born in 1986, so his parents definitely must have been fans, or they never heard of Star Trek, or never knew the character's name was James Kirk and didn't think twice about it. But
probably that one.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that was most of the people that I recognized. Although the pregnant lady, who we'll get to who some of these characters are in a minute. She was on 6 Feet Under. I recognized her from that. But yeah, that was a bit. Oh, and one of the cops later on was from Battlestar Galactica. So there's a lot of faces from various TV shows kind of popping up in this.
Yeah, nerd shows.
It's like you're not a nerd. You literally make your own comic books. Come on, Tim.
Yeah, but mine are gritty and cool.
Your Goatman comic is gritty, is it? Oh dear. So yes. So we got a whole host of characters. We have obviously Kimberly, the main girl, who is going on a trip with her friends in the car, which is why they're on the road. You've got a cop. He's just, I don't know, off doing cop business, I guess. You've got kind of a schlubby guy who is constantly snorting coke or something, and he's got a few funny scenes actually. He's funny, yeah. He's got a few notable moments. There's kind of like an uptight sort of businessy lady, who's always smoking a cigar or something like that.
Yeah, like a. It's not. I think it's like too small to be a cigar, but it looks like a cigarette. But it looks like, I don't know, like a handmade cigarette or something. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, but anyway, she's there, and we have like a mother and like a teenage son who she's way overprotective of for someone who's meant to be 15. She treats him like he's 10.
I mean, I honestly, like, I kind of assumed that he was like, I don't know, like maybe like early 20s or something, but then like, I don't know, like later on, like once you kind of get to like his scene later on in the movie, I'm starting to realize like, oh wait, is he supposed to be like, I don't know, like a high schooler or like middle schooler or something? Like I totally assumed he was like just kind of like a, I don't know, older dude that just like, lived or hung out with his mom or something.
I definitely got the impression he was a bit younger, but like the way she treats him is, she tucks him in at bed at night basically at one point, and it's like, we're off to the dentist tomorrow, son. We don't like that, but we have to go. Like, all right, okay. And there's a bit of backstory where it's like she lost her husband a few years ago, so she's like overly coddling him or whatever. Yeah. So what? Yeah, fine.
Ends up being too sad for this movie. I'm like, this is a little depressing.
And then there's like a biker who is just a biker. There's not really much more to him. He's got a good presence, but there's not much more plot wise for him.
Did you mention the lady that pulls up her shirt?
Well, that's not one of the main characters. Yes, there's a lady.
There's something about her that was memorable, though.
Oh, is it the boobs?
Might have been. It's not even like I just think it's so funny. Like, who would do that? Like, you're just driving and you just like flash someone.
Someone who's a little bit in the wild side, I guess.
I suppose so.
I mean, the honest answer is it's a horror movie and the white boobs. So yeah. That's why. I mean, this is not our first rodeo, Tim. We've seen many a woman in many a horror film take their tops off when situations where they would never take their tops off.
Yeah, but usually I have some time to prepare so I can close my eyes. This took me for...
Yes. And of course, the other big star of the film, we have to point out, is Apple products, which feature heavily throughout the duration of the film. It was like a trip down memory lane. We got a MacBook, we got the iMac that kind of comes out of the little dome with the sort of monitor on the arm, and then we got the iMac that had the green aqua kind of colored sort of sides, which I remember from this time period. I hated those things. So a lot of Mac product placement in this.
Yeah, it's so funny that, like, I don't know, I feel like those became like antiquated so quickly. Like, you know, we're so used to just kind of slim, you know, like flatter things, and yeah, whenever I see like something from this time period, this had like those big bulky like computers, it's interesting.
I mean, technology is it's not plateaued. Obviously things are still moving, but there's a very much a transitionary period in the 2000s where, like, they've all got mobile phones in this, but none of them are smartphones. You know, there's a really specific window of time this movie fits into technology wise, which is just something I tend to notice this whenever we do anything from, like, you know, 98 to like 2007. Like, there's this sort of almost about a decade of a window where you can just tell exactly what time period it's in. Whereas, you know, smartphones still look pretty much the same since they've came out. Like, you know, unless you're looking for very slim details, yeah, smartphone looks like a smartphone still. But in this, they got flip phones. I actually don't know if anyone actually used a flip phone, but they could have used a flip phone. It was the era of flip phones.
Yeah, it wasn't really any notable phone scenes, really. Except, I guess, like, when they have that meeting, she's like handing out phones or whatever. But I mean, other than that, like, people weren't using them that much.
I guess, was she assuming that they all didn't have phones already? That they could just get their numbers rather than, like, here's some burners. We're going.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, is she like paying like whatever, like 7 or 8 different phone bills? Like,
I don't know. Maybe they're all confiscated because they're working with the cop. Obviously, maybe true. Yeah, maybe he's taking them all out of the evidence room. I need to borrow these, Jim. Is that cool? Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So, you know, the cast is whatever. Also, the teenage son's name is Tim, which I noticed. I don't know if I've got any jokes planned for you, but I did notice it when someone called him Tim.
Yeah. He's a kindred spirit, for sure.
Tim Carpenter at that, for the record.
Wasn't there someone named Carpenter in the first movie?
There was a Hitchcock. I don't know if it was a Carpenter. I can't remember.
Like every character in the first movie was like named after some horror person.
Actually, the main character, Kimberly, her last name's Carmen.
Okay.
As in Roger.
Yeah.
Roger Carmen. Is it director, producer Tim? You may have heard of him.
Of course. No, I know.
You're looking so confused. I'm just
No, because you're talking about this movie. I was trying to think of the last movie, that if there's anyone with the Carpenter in the last movie.
I'm not going to remember all the names of the last movie.
All right. Well, I was saying, you know, the first one, it's like everyone had a very obvious, you know, horror person name, and it would have been surprising if that was overlooked, because it's, you know, very easy go-to one. Maybe if they did overlook it, maybe they're making up for it in this one.
Oh yeah, they realized, oh no, how could they miss Carpenter? Perhaps the most important one of all.
Yeah. It sounded like you're being sarcastic, but I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah. So yeah. As far as just spoiler free stuff, because obviously a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about is deaths, so we can't really talk about those until we get spoilers.
It's hard to get into it.
So as far as any other spoiler free stuff goes, I will say, like, I don't necessarily love the premonition stuff, although I do think a couple of the moments in this are a little bit playful with it, at least. But by and large, it feels a lot less like. I don't know. I don't feel like it happens in the movie, obviously, because it's part of how the franchise works, but I don't feel like it's obnoxious or as annoying as it was in the first movie. It kind of just like, it happens quick enough, and it's just like, okay, boom, boom, boom. It's almost comical, actually, like how quick a lot of these signs happen at the start. After she like sort of flashes back for the highway stuff, when she kind of just like starts seeing things immediately, and there's like 3 in a row kind of thing, and some of them are a little bit funny, like Highway to Hell playing in the car radio,
right? Yeah, no, I think that's something that's good about this movie is like the pacing, because that's the stuff that I easily like the least, like and all the stuff with the main character and getting premonitions and trying to figure stuff out, and like try to reach out to people, and like figuring out like how to stop like the whatever curse or whatever you want to call it, or that kind of stuff. Like all that stuff, it's necessary to get the movie going and everything, but it's also like not exactly the stuff I'm here for, but it's also not too like tiresome, versus the first movie. I feel like some of that stuff kind of lingered a bit, and made parts of it like a little more dull, but this, it's like it just kind of gives you enough to just keep it going forward, so you're never really like that bored or anything. The movie just kind of moves at a nice brisk pace.
Yeah, and while I do think that the advice from Tony Todd comes off as really kind of hokey, and like, why are they taking this super seriously, I do think that a lot of the characters are skeptical enough that it feels like, I wouldn't say realistic, because it's obviously not a realistic movie, but multiple characters don't believe any of this shit when they first sort of like talk about it, and it's not until they witness some pretty gruesome death up close that they kind of start taking it seriously. And it's like, okay, this feels like a nice like progression to the characters in the movie, where I believe that they now buy that this is all somewhat real, and they're going to go along with the plans and try and solve things and help with the ongoing stuff. So yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and there's a couple of annoying characters near the start, but they don't last long, so that's okay. Yeah, all right. Shall we do spoilers, Timmy?
Let's give another 30 seconds.
What do you want to talk about for 30 seconds?
Who are you voting for this year?
Is there an election later this year where I live?
I should hope so.
There was local elections recently.
Oh, yeah. Did you vote for a new king?
The fact that I said local elections, I mean, would rule out king anyway, but you don't vote for kings, Tim.
And spoiler time.
Oh, spoilers for Final Destination 2 from this point forward. You have been warned. All right. So, I guess we start with the highway chase, the chase, not chase. You know what I mean? The highway scene.
Death is chasing him. So.
I mean, Death is chasing. Yeah. Which is basically like, it does the thing where we sort of like introduce to all the various characters who are on the road. So it's a very dynamic scene even before the murder or the death starts happening, because it's like, oh, the lottery winner dude who's kind of like sleazy in his sports cars, kind of like making the eyes at our main character, and it's just kind of a silly little moment. Everyone's like hiding their illegal substances from the cop as they realize that he's behind them.
It's kind of funny that like, how many people are like I don't know, like drinking or taking drugs on this like little stretch of highway.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's the truck driver who's drinking booze, and he's actually transporting booze, and it says on the side of the truck, "Drink responsibly."
Responsibly, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of I don't know, tempting fate, I guess, in here, but. You get introduced to all these various characters, and it kind of doesn't, there's just enough of like a little bit of personality with each one of them that they're kind of memorable.
Yeah.
It's actually our friends in the backseat that I think are quite annoying. Like, I did not really enjoy their back and forth. Yeah. Which is why it was delightful when we flash back and, like, you know, she's coming out of the highway and she sort of turns the car around to stop anyone from getting on, and you know, the cop comes up and starts asking her what's going on, and then all the action that happens in the background. I was thrilled that all of her friends were immediately killed by the big truck with all the, you know, the what do you call those trucks that carry all the cars?
Super truck.
The super truck, yes.
Yeah, no, that was really cool, and it was pretty unexpected because, you know, if you're playing by the rules of the first movie, you know that death has to go in order. So
and they died last.
Yeah, so it's an interesting wrinkle there.
Yeah, but there's a lot of fun stuff in the actual, you know, chaos scene itself. We get giant log, because it's a big logging truck. So it's, you know, I say a log.
So that's what starts it. Yeah,
I say a log. I mean, it's effectively a tree trunk. You know, that's how big it is.
Super log
goes through the window of the cop car, and I think what my favorite part of this that just makes it like just chef's kiss is when you see it go through the back window of the cop car, there's like blooding, like just gunk sticking off the end of it, and I'm like, yes, that's what makes that good. That's what made that work. And there is some goofy stuff here, like I think it's the mother or son, like when they drive into one of the logs, their car just instantly ignites into an explosion, and I'm like, what caused the explosion? Like, there's another explosion later, but it's like they drive into like a tanker, so I was like, okay, whatever, like there's at least there's a source of fuel that's causing this. But that's good fun. I do laugh. I actually remembered, well, I didn't remember before I watched it, but like, it sort of came back to me in the moment. But I always remember noticing that when the main character's car is flipping, like they've done like a stunt, but they've got mannequins inside the car, and the blonde hair of like the blonde is like sticking to the top of the car. If you're looking for it, it's a really funny moment where you can sort of tell there's mannequins in there, and I don't know, it's fun though. Like, I'm not complaining.
Right? Yeah.
It gave me a chuckle, and I love that it ends with the car's upside down and like AJ Cook's still alive, and it's basically this big truck, the big tow truck, or it's not a tow truck, but you know the one with the cars. It basically comes through like the wall of flames, like almost like it feels like a Terminator moment. Like, you know, it's like Terminator's still coming for you. And that's right before she wakes up.
It reminded me of like Maximum Overdrive, because it just feels like the car has like so much personality. Like it feels like it's like gunning down towards you. So one of the things I think is like super impressive about this is just that, like, you know, whenever a movie can do something that like will just ensure that you always think of it. So like, you know, it's not like it's something you see like every time you go out on the road, but like anytime I see like, you know, a truck with like logs or whatever in the back, or like not even always logs, but like, you know, sometimes they'll have like, you know, like rebar, or like you know, like those big metal pipes, or like whatever, like anything like that. Like, I instantly think of this movie because it's just like this opening is just so memorable that anytime I'm driving I always think about that.
Yeah, and the biker like gets kind of impaled with his own bike, effectively. Like, there's just it's so varied, and it's why it's so much more fun than the plane crash in the first movie, because like there's all these different things. I mean, a lot of them are vehicle based because they're all in cars, but it's so varied in how they all die, and they all get their own little moment where, in the first movie the idea is that the explosion's spreading through the plane and kind of hitting them in different times, but this is a lot more distinct. So really good fun stuff, and naturally, you know, they're freaked out a bit, but this is only a year after the first movie, apparently. Like, the movie came out 3 years later, but they keep referencing that it's the year anniversary of Flight 180, and
you're gonna have to do like a running like checklist of the timeline like for each movie to see how it lines up.
Yeah, well, we can't talk about it too much at times.
Okay.
For reasons. Anyway.
All right.
For reasons, Terry. So, you know, basically, you know, AJ Cook's like speculating, like, could Death hunt us one by one, because she was watching that interview the night before on TV and blah blah blah. And they all go about their business, and they're just happy to be alive. And of course, it's the lottery winner guy who's just bought his new Mac, along with his new watch and his all new things, and he's coming home, and there's just people. This is like, so the opening scene's already this super. I say the opening scene, the opening tragedy is a super memorable, just like crescendo of death. It's beautiful, and then you get to this scene, and there's the magnets on the side of the fridge kind of like hint at what the final death's going to be because it says I.
Okay.
But you have like him turning on the cooker, him making food. He throws out like some like old food, like he just sort of tosses it out the window, which is important for later.
That is like, I've seen so many movies in my life, and that like maybe the most like unhinged thing I've ever seen a character do. Just like throwing like a full plate of spaghetti just out the window. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I know you're supposed to be a jerk, but that was just like bizarre.
Yeah. Honestly, my bigger question for this, honestly, is why he takes his top off before he starts cooking. It's an odd time to go topless, I feel.
Well, sometimes that grease splashes up, and you don't want to ruin a good shirt.
Yeah, sure, I suppose, yeah. Yeah. But I think what I love about a lot of the deaths, and this one especially, is very much maybe it is only just this one, but it's like a comedy of errors where a lot of what he does is kind of his fault, because he's stupid enough to like put his hand in the thingamabob. What do you call it? The
garbage disposal.
Thank you. Without taking his watch off, and I'm like, of course your hand got stuck. you just put this watch on, and it's like a brand new Rolex or whatever. Like, take it off, you idiot. But his hand's stuck, and then the frying pan, he's cooking like chicken fingers or something, and it catches fire, and he can't reach it because he's stuck in the sink. So, he's. It's this the thing where it's like, you're going to burn alive, and it's your fault for being an idiot.
Yeah.
Like it really is. But then of course he finally gets free. The flames are too much to put out with his puny little fire extinguisher, so he has to make a run for it.
Yeah, that's what's so great about just how everything is kind of building up to it, and really it kind of feels like they basically, you're referring to the first movie as having like the one good death scene, which I'm assuming you're talking about the teacher's death. And
it's not the other deaths there isn't some other fun deaths, but in terms of Final Destination deaths, like that's the one.
And it kind of feels like what they realized with this movie is like, that was the one that like really stood out, and it kind of feels like a lot of the deaths replicate it in a way that, we can have a lot of fun here by like kind of building this tension and having like a lot of fake outs and having things that lead into things instead of just, doing like a quick little death or whatever. Like you said, it's kind of like this escalating, like it's almost like a joke where you're kind of like building up to the punchline,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, I just love that, like, so much stuff is going wrong, and then there's so many fake outs, and it really keeps you guessing. It's like, okay, is the garbage disposal going to turn on with his hands there? It's like, no, okay. It's like, oh, well, surely he's going to die in this fire. Oh, no, he gets out, and then, it goes from there. And then I love that, it ends up being the very small thing at the start of the scene, like the spaghetti that really does him in.
Yeah, because he tries to leave, go out the window to escape the fire, and the windows like fall shut, right? And I'm like, okay, all right. The latch is, just broken. It's obviously very coincidental that both windows do it at the same time, but death works in mysterious ways. So obviously he's smart enough to smash the window and get out, and he goes down the fire escape, and again, his own stupidity, he gets on the ladder first and then tries to sort of like jolt it down by just sort of like jumping on it to make it slide down, and it only sort of goes halfway and he falls off, and then he's like, okay, he's escaped, he's in the alleyway, he's fine. He walks forward, and just like a banana peel, he slips in his spaghetti. He slips in his own stupid litter and lands, and then the ladder slides down, but it stops like a foot above his head, and he's like, oh god damn, I'm so lucky. And then of course it falls and goes through his eye, and it's very memorable. It's a little bit gory, and I mean, yeah, if we're going to like get nitpicky with it, like, would that ladder actually, from that, given that it's only about a foot above his head, would it actually have enough velocity to like completely go through his skull? I don't know, but you know, whatever. I'm having fun with it. The thing about
these movies, you can't really think too hard about them. Like, you kind of just have to be in for the ride and have fun with it, because that is one thing I was kind of thinking about, was like, all right, well, how exactly does death work, and like, does it have the power to actually like affect things, or can it, can it only like really like nudge stuff? Like, how does it ensure that, especially if something like an animal or someone driving is involved, like, how does it ensure that all this stuff falls into place? And the answer is it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like, if you're looking for very clear cut rules, I don't know if you're gonna find it. Like, you just have to kind of go with it and say, like, whatever's convenient for the scene, but just shut up and enjoy some fun kills.
Yeah, it's about wishy-washy. Ultimately, as long as the kills are fun, I'm kind of
right. Yeah,
I'm into it. But yeah, this one's really good, and this is now the second very memorable death scene in the movie. And the next one's going to be great too. I mean, there's a little bit of downtime in between here because they all see this in the news, so they all freak out and they're all calling the cop. And AJ Cook goes to see Ali Larter, Clear, who has voluntarily put herself in a padded cell so that she can't be hurt, and is escaping death that way still. We find out Alex died between movies, so he's just dead.
Did they, like, I forget how he died. Like, was it something like with a brick or something?
You see it briefly on like the newspaper stuff that the cop's looking at. I never actually read the whole thing. I noticed the word crush. There was something about crushing, but
yeah,
I didn't catch the actual death.
It's kind of funny just how like unceremoniously it's like, oh yeah, he died.
Yeah. Most of the characters in this are better than he was, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I'm okay with that. So they go to Claire. Claire's like, no, I'm not coming to help. But she changes her mind when she looks at some newspaper clippings, and then shows up pretty soon after. And it's like, oh, we have to go and get to who's next, which is the mother and son combo, who are at the dentist. And again, obviously the ending is the most memorable part. But when you're watching it again, like, you do see there's a lot of the build up where like there's stuff going on with the fish tank. There's like water going for the electrical socket. There's these birds crashing into the window as the dentist is trying to work on his teeth, and like he's trying to like stick him with a needle, and then like he jumps because a bird hits the window. Yeah. And he's like, how about we just put the laughing gas on, rather than use the needle.
Oh god, I mean, like, the dentist like can already be kind of stressful, but like, Jesus, I was like, you're already in like a place that people already are like, uncomfortable with, and then like you're just adding all of this stuff, like this constant construction going on, and like all these birds that are like flying into the window, and it's like, ooh, this is just I can feel like the tension going on in the scene.
The great thing about it is the dentist has a line where he says, oh, these how did they expect me? I'm going to have to replace those windows again. I'm like, how often do birds just fly into the window?
Yeah, also, like, I don't think they can like crash through. Like, that would have to be a really like if a whole flock was going at once, maybe, I don't know, but like, I don't know, just one pigeon shouldn't be able to crash it.
Yeah,
but this was like another one though that's like, this is where I was starting to wonder, like, okay, so can like death control animals? Like, I don't know, like, is death doing something to like say to this pigeon, like, hey, like, fly through this thing? But I mean, again, I'm not thinking about it too hard.
Well, no. The birds ultimately don't really have much to do with the death, other than the fact that they're there
true.
and scatter before his actual death. Like, the birds flying into the window have nothing to do with how he dies, so this is just happening.
That's true,
yeah. Honestly, the worst part of this for me, and it was actually making me gag a little bit when it happens, is, he's got like the mouth divider in his mouth, and because of what's going on with the fish tank in the other room and all that crazy stuff, the dentist leaves the room. And for some reason, I guess it's to like just like entertain the kids when he's like doing dentistry on younger children. But he's got like almost like one of those baby things, the little toys spinning around.
Yeah, mobile.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Okay, Well, you've got a baby. You should know this, right? But one of them falls off and lands in his mouth, and because he's gassed up, he can't actually move his arms to like take it out, and his like mouth's like been held open, and he's like, I was like, actually starting to gag a little bit watching this. It was making me my throat clench up.
Yeah, it's very funny because it's like a very simple thing. Like, you know, there's nothing elaborate or like over the top about it. All it is like, you know, something just kind of like slowly going down someone's you know, mouth. But it's one of those things where, you know, you probably don't think about it much, but actually seeing it on the screen, and it does give you like a visceral reaction, because you can just imagine that feeling of like, oh yeah, like you can't close your mouth and like something is going in, there's like nothing you can do about it. Like that is like deeply disturbing. So it's the kudos to them for like, again, coming up with something like really unique and simple, but also like, you know, that really gets you.
Yeah, speaking of disturbing, the kid's got like a really dark joke before he goes out to the dentist. When he's when he's in the waiting room.
What is this?
Yeah. So the nurse like calls him in to see the dentist, and he turns around to his mother and says, "Hey, if he gasses me and I wake up with my pants undone, we're not paying."
Yeah. It's also like such like maybe you would like say that joke to your friends, but like to your mom, like that's so weird.
Oh dear. There's definitely some like dialogue of the era. Like at one point, the coke addict says "chillax" to someone, and I'm like, oh god, that's super 2003. Chillax. Oh jeez. But of course, the actual death is that he gets out of the thing. I actually do laugh though, because it's the nurse or the receptionist, whatever her title is, who finds like the thing in his mouth.
Yeah.
And she comes in and pulls it out at the last second, and the dentist from the other is like, "Hey, how's little Timmy doing in there?" And she just has this look in her face like, he almost died.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because like it almost feels like kind of like a sitcom-y joke or something, where they're like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And she's like, "What?" Like, you know, you can almost feel that like beat to it. But then if you take a step back though, it's like, oh, like he could have very easily died. Like, you know, if you're that nurse, like you'd probably, your heart would be beating so fast, like holy shit, I can't believe, like, you know, like we almost had a death in here.
Which, yeah, like, you know, obviously an emergency room's used to having deaths in it because it's the nature of the game. A dentist should not be having deaths on their table.
No. Yeah, unless of course you're the dentist.
Yes.
Or a film.
Of course, yes. No, I love the sense of humor here, though. It's little moments this that make me like this movie more, because it's not taking itself absurdly seriously. It's having these moments of levity, and it only adds up, actually, because after this scene, it's like, okay, we're all meeting back at the cop's apartment for...
Well, we gotta talk about his actual death, though, before.
Oh, sorry, of course, yes, I'm rushing ahead, sorry.
Because I have a big question about this.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this is teased early on, of course, along with the birds, is that there's like a crane like lifting up glass panels. They're doing construction outside, and so do you know how I said earlier that this character Tim, like he's 15. We're told he's 15, and his mother treats him like he's 10. Well, he acts like he's 15 or whatever most of the time, but for some reason the moment before he dies, he suddenly turns into a 5-year-old, because AJ Cook, Kimberly's running up saying, "It's the birds lead to your death," and for some reason he hears birds and he sees like all the birds on the ground, like all the pigeons in front of him, and he goes, "I'm going to run up to all these birds and scare them." So
all right, so here's my big question. So because I'm of two minds of this. So one makes me think that, you know, he hears her saying like, "Oh, it's the birds," and for some reason he kind of goes like, "Oh, like these birds are gonna do something. Let me scare them away so that they're not here anymore." So basically, it's like, "Hey, get out of here!" Like, So that's what's going through my head. But the way it's shot, it doesn't look like that. It looks like you said, like he turns into a 10-year-old kid and it's like birds, like let me chase them. Like...
the way he runs towards them is like, yeah, I said 5. Maybe I'm being generous with that age. It's
no,
like
actually, that's probably right.
Yeah, it's like a toddler.
Literally, my son is 1, and like that's when like he sees a cat or something. That's how he runs towards it, like ah.
And the cat's thinking, oh no, not again.
Yeah.
The little human, get away from me. Oh dear. I wonder, like, this is a weird question to ask. You probably get defensive here and say your son's a genius, but I wonder at what point your son starts to be smarter than the cats.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because he's not starting off as smart as the cats. The cats are definitely smarter when he's first brought home. That's not
for sure. Yeah.
Pretend that's not true, because they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, me and my wife we were talking about this the other day, where it's just like, because our son is always like doing stuff, and like we'll be like, oh wow, he's doing this pretty early. Like they usually say that like they don't do this until they're like 2 months or like 2 years old or something like that. So like we're always kind of like, oh yeah, like we think he's like really smart and stuff. But then like when you talk to other parents and stuff, you realize like, oh, like literally every parent says that. Like they're always like, yeah, like our kid is just like, no one's like, yeah, I don't know, our kid's kind of dumb. Like he doesn't do anything. So so yeah, we're always like, well, it seems like he's kind of smart, but I don't know. Maybe we're just parents that think that.
Very possibly. I want someone to build me like a graph that shows when the intelligence of a human child goes surpasses a cat's intelligence. Yeah. Because it's curious. Anyway, so. Yeah, when he makes the bird scatter, I said the birds don't have anything to do with his death. I suppose technically that was incorrect, because when he makes the bird scatter, but that's him doing that. But he makes the bird scatter. One of them, like basically hits or frightens the crane operator, and like and the lever. He hits the lever by accident, and then the pane of glass, which is perfectly above young Tim, comes crashing down, and we have our third very memorable death scene. Yeah. Which is this puppet or whatever being crushed in the splat. Yeah, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, the other thing that's great is like I don't know if how much CGI they use in this movies, but all the deaths look like really good. It's like I'm assuming a lot of it was practical. Maybe a little stuff was like touched up here and there, but like
it's mostly like practical.
This looks really good. Yeah, actually, and you know what I'm kind of wondering now. Because we're talking about how like he looks like a lot older than he's kind of like portrayed. I wonder if the character was written to be like 10 years old, but then like when they started filming, they kind of realized like, well, we can't show a 10-year-old kid getting crushed by glass. Like that's like too mean. Like we gotta age him up, but then like maybe didn't change the script or something.
Well, probably before they started filming, because once they're filming, they've already cast them. But yeah.
Well, right. But you know what I mean. Like
the studio maybe said like, hey, you're not doing this to a 10-year-old. Age him up to a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that happening.
We can't show like early 2000s Haley Joel Osment or something like that getting crushed.
Oh dear. So yeah,
that is
very
like
memorable.
So funny. That would be like a good GIF or something in running towards the birds.
What age was Dakota Fanning at this time? Was she even born yet? I don't know. But the little Dakota Fanning when she was a kid running towards the birds and then getting crushed with a pane of glass. That's what we want. So yeah, super memorable. It's a satisfying, because it's satisfying on two fronts. So you see how he sort of gets squished and there's like sort of like blood splats, but also the glass smashes. So you get like a sort of double sort of whoosh, like
it's cool,
happening. That's fun. Yeah. So they all go to a meeting at the cop's apartment, and it turns out this cop's a very outdoorsy man with a lot of hobbies, because his closet has like ice skates, has like a climbing axe, he's got like a canoe like strapped to his wall. Like he's a very like great outdoorsman kind of, a lot of sporty kind of apparatus. And the reason why I bring this up is because at one point when they're safety proofing the apartment, the cokehead, he's going to put something in the closet, and he opens it, and this is a genuinely funny little moment where he opens it, and then the camera sort of like cuts around all these things that have like sharp blades on them.
That's funny.
Ice skates just dangling.
So can we talk real quick about the scene of I guess we just gotta keep calling him the cokehead, but him arriving at the apartment and going up in the elevator.
Yes, the elevator. Yeah, this we have to talk about the elevator scene. His name is Rory, I think that was his name.
Okay, yeah.
So we can call him Rory. So he so he's in the elevator and he rushes in, right? The doors are closing, there's a guy already in there, and this guy that's in there is just in this scene, he's not in any other scenes. Rory jumps in and he gets his foot stuck in the elevator on his way in, and he has to take his shoe off and pulls the shoe in. So he's holding his shoe in his hand, and he looks at his shoe, and he goes, "Hey buddy, is that shit in my shoe?" And then puts the shoe like an inch from his face, and the guy has to like back away. So immediately he's being really weird and awkward, and the guy's super uncomfortable. And then moment passes, and then he goes, "Hey buddy, you got a little something," and he sort of signals towards the side of his mouth, and the guy like wipes his mouth. He's like, no, there's still the, "Hey, I'll get it if you want," and he licks his finger as if he's going to go in to like clean it like a parent. And it's like, what is this scene?
It's so strange, but like I kind of love it because it's just it makes like the character like so much more memorable than like he was already like a little goofy and stuff, but like this definitely like cements him as like, oh, like I don't know, this is just like a kind of a weird crazy character.
I think,
and like
it's this scene plus the closet scene where because like I say, he sees all these blades, and then when he goes to put things in, he like messes it up and stuff starts falling around like down around him, so he ends up like falling back out of the closet, and it's like a really almost slapsticky little moment. I think little moments like that in this this elevator scene like kind of
and
I don't know, to make it memorable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nice. Like it's, I don't know. Like again, it's not like a comedy really, but there's like, these kind of just like weird moments that are like actually like generally funny. Like I really did laugh at this.
Yeah, there's a moment actually when they all go at the meeting for the first time when Claire first walks in, where like a couple of things happen and like the canoe that's hanging up like swings towards her. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, it's a death trap. We have to do it. Fix this place up.
Yeah, that's when like the angry guy is like, oh, like this is like crap. Like you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like,
the baker, the baker's like, I don't believe any of this shit.
And then like, the canoe goes crashing through the window, and he like has to duck to avoid it, and it's like,
Well, it's what's nice is that like he doesn't believe any of this. The mother doesn't believe it or even care, but it builds up to our next, also very memorable death in the movie, which also has like a weird element to it as well at the start. So the mother who's just lost her son, right? She's just watched her son be crushed by a pair of glass. Is in the elevator, and the biker goes in the elevator as well, and there's a guy in the elevator who's just like holding a box full of like prosthetic arms with hooks, right? That's what he's got, a box of. And it's like, okay, that's weird. And when Rory falls out the closet, right, with all the stuff falling down, a lot of the stuff ends up like sort of hanging down, and it creates the shadow of what looks like a man with lots of hooks. Is that a sign? I think I see a sign. And like, yeah, oh god, and the mother's next, so it's going to be someone with hooks. So they phone the phone they gave her, and like, hey, a man with hooks is going to kill you. So that sets up the death thing. But before we get to what the actual death is, we can't overlook the little weird moment that happens with the guy before that, where he's standing behind the two of them in the elevator just holding his box, and just out of nowhere he just leans in and smells the back of her hair and just like wafts it in, and then the biker sort of looks over and notices and sort of is and he's just like, what the hell, dude? So he's been a creepy perv.
Total creep.
And
at first like I kind of think like, all right, like he looks like so creepy, like he has like kind of like this like long like gray hair, and he's holding this box of like hooks up, but you feel like, all right, he looks so creepy that it's gonna turn out he's actually like a nice guy. It's like, no, he is actually a creep.
Well, At first I thought, okay, this is something to do with his job, this box of like hooks. But after that sniffing moment, I'm like, nah, he's just a serial killer or something. This is just part of his collection.
And I think it's kind of funny when they call the mom, like, they don't say like, hey, we got a warning like about something with hooks, so like be careful around hooks. But like, no, they literally say like, oh, there's a guy with hooks is gonna kill you. Hey,
Candyman was here earlier. Technically, I mean, this is
that's true.
Something to look out for. Yeah, but she drops the phone and she goes to pick it up, and her hair gets caught in one of the hooks that's sticking out the box.
Yeah,
and she can't get it out, and she starts freaking out because she's just heard this and she's scared of the guy now. Everyone's trying to like pull her hair out of the hook. And then, of course, she ends up like walking out of the elevator when the doors are open and the doors shut, and then trap her head. And the elevator's trying to go up. She's dangling out of the elevator. At this point, Claire and the uptight sort of business lady run in. They're trying to like pull her out. The guys in the elevator are trying to help her out or push her out. And it just sort of slowly happens until eventually the two ladies pull back her body without a head. And what I liked about this is because the biker was like so adamant he didn't believe in any of this shit, but then at this moment he's just, there's like a shot of him like sitting in the corner of the elevator staring at the head, and he's just like in shock, and it's like, okay, now you believe you're all going to die.
And there's like a lot of it's pretty nice and gory too. There's like a lot of blood spray.
Oh yeah. Which actually leads to something that I think is actually a really interesting part of the mythology, which they kind of hinted at a little bit in the last movie, and they don't do a ton with it here, but this idea that if you're not next on the list, you can't die, because this biker basically tries to kill himself. He's like, well, I'm just going to go on my own terms then, and he grabs the cop's gun and he goes to shoot himself, and he tries to pull the trigger multiple times and it doesn't work, and like one of them says, oh, was it empty? And he opens the revolver and it's like, no, it's 6 rounds. He's like, well, it must have been duds. And he's like, 6 in a row? That's not possible. Like, that doesn't happen. So it's like, oh, okay, this is an interesting mechanic. And I don't know if the following movies actually do that much with it. I feel like there's so many opportunities to play with this, but
that's a lot of, it's definitely fun stuff you can do there. Which it kind of sucks that you can't do that, because this probably would be like the best thing to do, because all the other deaths like are so like crazy and violent. Like, if I had the choice, would be like, all right, let death take care of you, which is gonna end up being this weird, elaborate like series of events that is gonna probably be extremely painful and embarrassing. Or if you can just find a quick and easy way out yourself. Like, I don't know, it's maybe that's the best way to go.
Yep, but they all get in the car because the other cops have found the pregnant lady, because that's the goal right now. So Tony Todd's advice, to go back to that scene. Explain
this to me, because I think I don't know. I think I lost a bit about what they're saying. So a new life beats death. That's the deal here.
Well, specifically. So basically, the idea is that if one of the people who was supposed to die survives, and then a baby's born that wasn't supposed to be born before, then death has to like sort of rewrite its entire list, because there's a new life that wasn't supposed to exist. So
okay, that's interesting.
It's not just any new baby. It's the idea that like So I suppose the idea is that if you're on death's list, let's say you've been in one of these Final Destination style things where you've survived, the best thing to do is have probably one of the guys impregnate a woman who's not on death's list, so that then because then the woman's not in danger. Like, the woman's not going to be like chased by death, and then you just have to survive death for 9 months, and then once the baby's born, you'll be okay. Now, I actually don't hate the logic of this. I just don't think I like how it comes out of nowhere, and like we just have to accept that Tony Todd knows this.
It's an interesting idea. But I don't think it's like presented that well. Like, they're kind of like talking about it, and like you said, it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and just kind of like, wait, what? Like, okay.
But I mean, it gives them a goal for the movie. They're trying to find the pregnant lady, and there's a whole bit of comedy where the cop, the guy from Battlestar Galactica, he's got her in a jail cell because basically to find her, he put an APB on her, so they've got her in a jail cell and her water breaks, and there's a lot of decent comedy, honestly, with him like freaking out and like, don't do this to me, don't have your baby. And then later when he's at the hospital with her, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go now, and he's like, no, don't you leave me. Like he becomes the de facto husband in the situation. So there's some amusement happening there. Obviously the twist later, of course, is that she never actually died in the highway, so this baby's not an unplanned life. This is not, doesn't count. Yeah. So then the plan to fix everything is the same thing that kind of fixed it in the first movie, which is to just have someone die and be resuscitated, which clearly didn't work last time, so we just have to go with it. Do you know what's so funny? Outside of the final little epilogue scene, even though I think this movie's way better than the first one, it does kind of suffer from the same problem where the final little chunk just can't live up to the rest of it because it has to wrap up somehow.
No, I agree. I think this last like maybe 15-20 minutes, it kind of I mean, maybe it's just like a fault of like everything else in the movie was like, you know, very fun and memorable, that this last little chunk just ends up being like a little like, okay, it like kind of feels like it's just going through the motions and just trying to go through the story beats and get it out of the way to end the movie. Like it doesn't feel like anything. It's not horrible, but
it's not bad. I'd say it's better than that section of the first movie where I just didn't remember anything from it. But before they get to the hospital, though, where a lot of the climax takes place, there is some great stuff on the way. So, well, before we even get to the good deaths, there's a revelation they all have, is that they all had a near-death experience, technically, about a year ago. And the twist of the movie is that all of these characters should have died a year ago, but all of their individual deaths were altered because people survived the plane. So it had this knock-on effect where the baker turns out he's a teacher and he gets transferred because the teacher in the first movie died, kind of thing, and like so on and so on. So there's like all these knock-on effects, which is just okay.
Yeah, that's a fun idea. I like that. Yeah, it's
a fun idea. If you think about it too much, though, it becomes too problematic. Where this never stops. There's too many ripples, and like death, it can never be completely cleaned up. But and death like orchestrated all of these people to get together for one accident. It's you don't think about it too much. Just go with it. It's fine.
Yeah, again, then you gotta like start thinking about like so much stuff, like about how much power does death actually have that they can coordinate all these things, and is it just constantly playing catch up all the time, and like it's just don't think about it too hard.
Because at least to the question that we talked about in the last Final Destination review, which is why is there people having these visions now, and is there a purpose? And therefore, there's so much mythology you could add to with that if you wanted to go down that rabbit hole. But the movie's not interested in doing that. It's just a mechanic. It's fine. But there's some great deaths coming up. So they end up crashing, right? They end up like the car like ends up going into a ditch, into a field, and obviously like they almost get impaled with all these pipes that are kind of like sitting there that they crash into, and they don't, but business lady gets like stuck. She's stuck in the driver's seat, and there's like a pipe like going through the back of the headrest, which leads to this is actually quite a quick death, but there is like build up to like something else happening at the same time. But it's also a really fun one because it's she basically gives the firefighters there, and he's got like a big cutting tool to like get her out of the car. And it's when he goes to use this, and she's like, "Oh, that's really loud. Can you put it on quiet mode?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, miss. I'll put it on quiet mode." And when he rams it into the car, it triggers the airbag, and it snaps her head back, and it impales her head on the pipe. It's such a good little.
It's fun.
It's a good little quick death because the pipe was set up ages ago, and she's been talking to them. Stuck in this predicament, and as this is all happening, like there's this gas leak, from underneath the car, and then it gets set on fire from her death, and it results in an explosion which sets a barbed wire fence across the field and slices Rory into like 3 pieces. And this is a great cool. This is wonderful. This is one of these things where like his arm is instantly cut off, but the rest of his body like takes a second to fall, and you see a little bit of intestines sticking out. Like this might be the best death in the movie. It might be.
Yeah, and that's saying something because there's a lot of really good ones.
The ladder in the eye's good. The tree log through the window's good. They're all good.
Now I'm sorry. I forget. I just watched this a little earlier today, but I can't remember. Does the biker die in this scene too? I forget what happens to him.
Oh, he basically starts having trouble breathing. He's got like a
Oh, right, and he's in the hospital.
So he gets taken to hospital because he's not dead. He's just like
right
in danger of dying, which leads to like him lying in the hospital bed looking around at all the medical apparatus and be like, oh god, it's all going to try and kill me. Which is a funny little moment. One little detail in this scene that's important for the ending is that there's this like teenager who's like there because his dad lives nearby and they're trying to help. He almost gets hit by a news van and Rory pulls him out of the way, which is important because the movie's just established that all these characters were supposed to die in like different incidents, and this knock-on effect of them being saved because of the plane and the survivors of the plane is, so you're like, oh wait, that's going to come into play later, this little dweeb. But yeah, so they go to the hospital. Honestly, other than some round around, the only notable things that really happen here is that there is an explosion that kills both Rory and Clear. Clear does get killed. And I'd say this is the only death that left me feeling a bit, it was just whatever.
It's not,
Yeah.
That's fine. And and especially these last couple of things, even with the car crash and the getting the business lady getting impaled and stuff, that's cool, but also there's a little bit of me that was kind of well, it feels like we saw a lot of this in the beginning, opening scene, and then I feel like the explosion, it's well, I don't know, we already saw people kind of die in the explosion in the opening scene. Of itself it's kind of just boring, and then also just add on to the fact that I feel like we kind of seen it before. Didn't really do much.
Oh, I had no problem with Business Lady's death because I thought the impalement was very specific. But come on, Rory's death was great.
Oh no! Rory's was very, very different because it's not if he just had died in the explosion, I feel like that would have been boring. But the being sliced up by the barbed wire stuff was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought I don't know when they first have the car crash, part of me was well, we kind of already seen that. But then they end up doing different stuff with that there, but then I don't know, the explosion didn't really do much for me.
I don't think the point is to repeat car stuff. It's just more so that it's just natural if they're going to get into a predicament that
sure,
it's going to go, everything on the way to the hospital is going to be that. Basically Kimberly's oh, I need to die and come back because she's had a vision of being resuscitated, so she drives the van into the water. Jimmy Olsen jumps down to get her, and she does get resuscitated. And there's this thing where as he's sitting by her hospital bed and saying, hey, we beat it, we cheated death, and the camera pulls back, the lighting goes almost angelic, she gets this warm glow of light hitting her. And then it goes to the final scene of the movie, which is they're at a barbecue with so the guy and his son who were at the field helping. So it's the teenager who got pulled out of the way of the news van, and the guy who was there to help phone for the ambulance and stuff. They've got them over for a barbecue.
I think did it say it's 1 year later?
It may have said 1 year later.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of weird to wait a year to go and hang out with these people who help save their lives or something, but whatever.
Yeah.
So they're having a barbecue, they're just talking about whatever, and then casually the son says, I had an ear call that day in the field, didn't I, Dad? Yeah, you just missed that van. Your friend Rory pulled him out of the way. And it's oh wait, that doesn't sound good. That sounds like death might come after him. And at this point, the teenagers went over to do something at the barbecue, and you just get this shot of the barbecue exploding comically in the distance, and then the mum screams, and when she looks forward, her son's arm is just lying in the plate in front of her, and this drum beat kicks in for the credits. This ending is pure comedy. It is
just
having fun with it. This is not taking itself seriously at all.
Yeah, and I know I just complained again about being like, well, the explosions are kind of boring and we have explosions in the beginning, but it totally works here in this case because it's just like so like cartoony, that it's just really fun. The only thing again, I'm thinking about this too hard, but like part of me is going like, okay, so yeah, you establish the whole like ripple effect where like, always if someone's supposed to die, but then someone that survived an earlier thing saves them, creates this effect or whatever. But the only thing with this one that kind of gets me is like the only reason he was in danger in the first place was because of these survivors that shouldn't be there. So technically, if everything had, worked out and like they died in that logging accident, then they wouldn't have been there to, put him in danger in the first place. So to me, it feels like them saving him more just evens things out instead of like creating a like deficit for death. You know what I mean? But again, like just I don't think about it.
Yeah, don't think about it. They don't care. The writers don't care about that here.
Yeah. Like you said, it's very funny. Like
it's just a fun little bit. Like it teases up the idea that he's not supposed to be alive, and then the explosion happens, and then the arm. Like it's just a boom, 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 funny joke, and then credits. Like I guarantee you're not supposed to be thinking about it this deeply.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's like a credit to the movie because if the movie was not as fun, then logic stuff would probably stick out more and it would just be another thing to complain about. But because everything is, working really well and it's so fun and you're just kind of moving right along and having all these fun kills, it's like, I don't really care if, the logic might not make perfect sense in my head or whatever. Like it's like a roller coaster ride. Just kind of sit back and enjoy it. Don't think about it too much. One thing we kind of skipped over that I thought not as funny as like the little end bit there, but I did kind of laugh when they're in the hospital and like they go into the delivery room to see like the baby or whatever, and like all excited and hugging, and the lady's just like, who the hell are you? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was all right. I mean, I get that they're going to try and protect her because they want to make sure the baby gets born. But they're sort of rushing to the delivery room. I'm like, what are you actually going to do when you get there? Like what are you going to help with exactly? Like you're not going to be much of use. So I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I think I like this not taking itself too seriously, and because ultimately because the rules are so wishy-washy and because things can't be too clearly defined. Inherently, I can't care about the rules in the sense that I root for the characters and think they've got a reasonable chance of escaping because it feels like the rules for death could just can change to whatever fits the movie, and that's fine as long as you're giving me fun, goofy scenes of deaths and stuff, and I'm having a good time. Yeah, I think where the franchise can fall down is when it takes itself a bit too seriously, and I do think some of the sequels after this do go back to taking themselves seriously or go back to like pretending that I'm supposed to care about the characters and their outcome. Here I'm enjoying the characters because they're kind of cartoony and I'm not really fussed about them making it or not, and that's okay because I think it works in that context. But yeah, we'll see, because I don't necessarily remember exactly how much I felt for the next couple too much. I remember how I felt about the fifth one. I won't spoil it, but 3 and 4 I do remember having various shades of disappointment after the second one being so fun, but I mean maybe
it's a high bar for sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll feel differently when we get into it. I do know that certainly 3 and 4 do not top the opening like disaster. Like that, the opening disaster is definitely the best in the second one.
I think to their credit though, I don't remember much about the other movies, but I do still remember the opening sequences of the next two. So I'll give them credit for, I wouldn't say they're as good as this, but at least they are memorable, I think.
Yeah, because it's
I don't even think I remember the fifth one at all though.
The fifth one's on a bridge. I think it's like an earthquake in a bridge. I want to say.
It doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah, the fourth one's an F1 race gone wrong, and the third one's a roller coaster. Which, even as I'm saying them out loud, like I can tell there's not as much variety in them for like all the deaths at the start. You know, because they're all in the same cart in a roller coaster, or they're all just at one part of this racetrack. Versus all these different vehicles, all being in different places, all getting hit by different things. Yeah, so but maybe I'm not remembering it too well. Maybe I'll be surprised when we watch them and see things.
Sure.
But yeah, I have a good time with Failed Decision 2. It's not it's not perfect. There's definitely still things to nitpick, and it's at its worst when it's playing into what the first movie did that I didn't like. You know, when Ali Larter starts like talking about desk design, and she's like sort of taking herself seriously and thinking about Alex. Like I'm like like less of this, but. Luckily, the pacing's brisk. The most of the deaths are very memorable and fun. In fact, I would say it has probably some of the best deaths of the entire decade for horror movies.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, I there's not a lot from the decade that I think comes close in terms of just fun deaths. So, yeah, good stuff. I had a good time.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I was. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, because I thought it would be like similar to the first one, where like I remember liking it more than the first one, but I thought it would just be like, all right, like, you know, first one's okay, this might be a little more, you know, better than okay, but no, I actually think it's like a huge leap or, you know, step above the first one, where I think what do these kids say nowadays? It understood the assignment, you know, like it knew what it needed to do. Like, yeah, we're taking the premise, we're heightening, we're having fun with it, we're not taking ourselves too seriously. And you know, and maybe and like I said, it's not perfect. Like there are parts where it's like, all right, now you're getting a little too plot heavy, and, you know, maybe a little over emotional or whatever, or the characters are being a little too serious. But again, that stuff is usually so fast, and you're on to like to the next big crazy thing, that, you know, you really don't notice the little stuff that as much. And instead it's just like, yeah, nice fun ride, like from, you know, different set piece to set piece.
Yeah, odd tidbit on this. So I had this on DVD back in the day, and it was back in the time when, you know, I used to watch all the extras and listen to the commentary track and all that stuff.
I miss those days.
I know. But one of the things that this had, and not many DVDs had this, but in addition to the commentary track, it also had like a subtitle track, but it was like trivia pop-ups, right? So,
okay, yeah.
You know, some had that, but it wasn't super common, right? It wasn't a super common feature, but some had it. And this was like a really random one that had, you know, it tended to be big movies that had it, and this was like just this random horror sequel had it. But the trivia facts were kind of weird and random, and at times just kind of whatever, like, oh yeah, thanks for that. But the one that I always remember sticking out to, because again, it's not really to do with the movie, it's just that, see the scene right before Rory dies, is a scene where he talks to Kimberly and asks her to go and like get rid of all of his porn if he dies, just so that his mother won't be heartbroken.
Sure.
I distinctly remember during that scene that the subtitle like trivia at the bottom, because it came up saying something to, I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was basically, this is how much money is spent in the US every year on porn. Like, that's not
okay, interesting.
I was just like, that's the trivia you're giving me, not stuff to do with the movie or making of the movie or whatever. So I don't know. But in the weird side, but,
strange, yeah.
I always remember that. And the other thing I remember is at one point it tells you the title of the movie's an oxymoron.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Because you can't have more than one Failed Destination. Right. So Failed Destination 2 is and also 3, obviously.
I mean, so yeah, that went right over my head, because I mean, we already had like what 9, 10 Final Fantasies by this point.
That's fair, yeah.
So.
Yeah, but they're all in their own universes though, so technically. Because Final Fantasies in story aren't sequels to each other; they're all their own standalone things.
So ratings. What are we?
Why are you giving me? I feel like you're more of a Final Fantasy guy than I am. Why are you giving me that look? Like you think I'm talking crazy? Yes, ratings, Tim. What are you giving Final Destination 2?
Yeah, I mean, like like you said, it's not perfect, but the imperfections are very minor in the overall enjoyment of the movie. It's really just a fun ride from start to finish. I have very little complaints or nitpicks about it. It's really fun. I'm gonna go pretty high. I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it's a blast to watch. Definitely. Again, I don't want to spoil future reviews and everything, but I mean, I think this is the highlight of the series, and I don't think that's uncommon. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that this isn't their favorite. It's really good, very solid, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm pretty much inclined to agree with a lot of that. It's just a good time, and it's the movie you point to. It's the one in the series you say this is what this premise can be, and this is the fun that you can have. And I definitely remember being disappointed that the deaths just weren't as good by and large. Maybe there's 1 or 2 good deaths per movie after this, but this one is the concentration of how good the deaths are. It's all but one. It's only Claire's explosion death that I really didn't think much of. Everything else I thought was great. So yeah, you know what? I think I have to go with 8 as well. I think I have to. Yes. I think this is great for what it is. This is a great movie for what it is, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I would recommend Final Destination 2. It was a good time. So we'll see. What's interesting is that Final Destination 3, it came out just when I was starting to be old enough to go and see movies that were rated that age.
Nasty.
Nasty. But I didn't go see it though. I missed it in theaters, and I was annoyed that I missed it in theaters and didn't see it till later. So we'll find out what I thought when I finally saw Final Destination 3 soon on Screams After Midnight. Not next time. It's not the next movie, but it'll be soon on Screams After Midnight. So look forward to that. But there you go. That is our thoughts on Final Destination 2. Let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments. Like, subscribe, all those things on YouTube. Did I like that? No.
You want to thank some people that gave you money?
Yeah, so I'm going to thank the Patreon producers, Tim. That is a thing that I do on the show. Thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Boardnow, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They are Patreon producers, all in the higher tiers of Patreon, but you can support us for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble. Every month, for just $1 per month, you get a bonus episode of Streams After Midnight, and you get an episode of Even More Streams, which is just a casual monthly show where we just sit down and talk about whatever horror movies we've been watching. So
M's.
Even More Streams. M's. Okay, you're abbreviating.
Yeah.
Very good.
Don't act like I'm some wackadoo. Come on.
You are some wackadoo, though. All right. So go check out Patreon. Get us on Twitter at Screams Midnight. Share us. Give us a high rating on iTunes, 5 stars, or whatever podcast app you choose. Rate us highly. Thank you very much. All right, Tim, do you want to post for the thumbnail if we reach that point?
Yes, please.
Okay. Tim's going to post for the thumbnail. Make sure your head's not cut off at the top. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, pause. That's what we're going with. Okay. All right. I'll make it work. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. This has been Screams After Midnight. Hopefully you had a good time. We will see you next time. So keep watching scary movies. We're out.